internationally, we always try to learn a greeting and a way of saying thank you in the native language where we're visiting. And I always find that people appreciate that gesture of just trying to communicate in their language. And then also it kind of breaks down some walls, and they even try to communicate back in their, after hearing our really broken language, whether it's Italian or Portuguese or Thai, they're more willing to try their language because they hear how bad our attempt is. But we do attempt to communicate in that language. So anyways, this week I want to have us pause and communicate in a way that is effective, not just in the words that we say, but actually think about our love language. You may be familiar with the book by Gary Chapman. A lot of people refer to it without even having read the book because there's 5 love languages and they're pretty self-explanatory, but as I have gotten to know my own and then also gotten to know my husband's love language and the way that we often miscommunicate, not necessarily, in a bad way causing conflict, sometimes we just miss each other's language of love and ways that we're trying to communicate what we need or what we want. And while it may not cause conflict, it might cause some confusion or at least some miscommunication. So this week, I invite us to pause and really consider our communication. When we say all we need is love, in fact, it's true. But being able to speak and to understand love languages is very key. It can really amplify a message of love. It can also clarify when we're meaning one thing but we're communicating another and that person may not understand. And I think love language is partly cultural. There's some cultures where food is a language of love, and whenever you go to someone's house in the Filipino culture, like feeding people is a language of love. I know I was just communicating with my mother-in-law as we were planning for Thanksgiving, and she and I were going back and forth with recipes and talking about different things, and I just said, planning is our love language. And there's different ways that we communicate love and care and concern for people in our lives. And I really think that at this time, it's the first week of December. Today is December 1st. And as we move into this last month, it's important because it's a time when gift giving tends to be the cultural norm. And I am Christian and Catholic, and we celebrate Christmas, and so Christmas presents are part of my culture. Not everyone's language is gifts, so to be aware of that can really save us a lot of time, possibly a lot of money, but also give us an opportunity to actually deepen our relationships with people. So I just wanted to go over the 5 love languages that Gary Chapman identifies. And like I said, there's different nuances to the language of love and the languages of love, but I think it's important to at least know the 5 that he identifies. The first one is words of affirmation. So that's an explicit thank you, or I love you, or thank you for doing this because really it made a difference in my life. And just hearing those words can mean a lot to someone. And for someone for whom that's their love language, they will go on and be very, very specific about what you did or who you are for them and how that makes a difference. Acts of service. So actually my dad's love language, I think, is acts of service because, he is a man of very few words, but he does things for me that I don't even ask him to do, and they're done. I remember one time I was just saying how I needed something, and I was visiting home one time, and before I left, even within days before I left, he had already gotten that thing for me. Taking care of things for people that we really love and care is the way that we show and express our love. Although I may never hear the words out of his mouth, and but I know for sure and without a doubt that his acts of service for me is his language of love. Receiving gifts, and this is both a cultural thing in some traditions, and then also it could be a seasonal thing. The fourth language of love that they identify is quality time. And by quality time, it's really like taking time out to spend with someone. So that could be a special dinner or even a daily dinner. So I remember when I was growing up, we sat down for dinner. If someone was late, we waited for that person, and we all sat down as a family for dinner, and that was our quality time. And I remember when I first got married to Jason, and the thought that we would eat at different times and different places in the same house just kind of took me by surprise, because I just figured everybody sat down and had quality time at dinner. And now we kind of have every day is different, and some days we are in the same place, and he knows that's important to me. But quality time and just the way that people make time in their schedule is an expression of love, and it's also an opportunity to just be really present. And so just being aware that quality time can be an expression of love. And lastly, physical touch. And that could be a hug or hand holding, or even just like sitting close to someone. And again, like if someone for whom that is their language of love and the other person just doesn't even think about it and sits across the room, they might actually be miscommunicating without any intention of conflict. So just being aware of what is your language of love and what is the language of love of the people in your life. And just understanding that and becoming more fluent could really up-level our connection and our quality of relationships. So one of my favorite tools that I talk about all the time, and every year when I do my life review, is this Wheel of Life. And I marked on here in orange, I kind of drew this orange line, connecting home life, romantic relationship, family, and friendships, because I think that just communicating more fluently in our language of love and the language of love of people around us can help all of those. So when I say, like, let's review your life and look at every category of life and improve those categories, this is like understanding our language of love can up-level 4 areas of our life. Home life, because with our roommates or partners or kids, we are able to really communicate much more effectively, and also not take things personally when we realize that our language of love is different from their language of love. It can really affect our romantic relationships, and just by even agreeing to state, this is what I need, this would be helpful, even in a time of conflict or a time of misunderstanding, like I need a hug right now, could really be an easy way to connect and kind of down level the stress. And then with family and extended family, especially around the holidays, it can really help and be much more efficient. Time, money, resources, the way that you gather for your family, being able to communicate and express and receive love among our family members can be such a game changer if we're speaking the same language. And then finally, with our friendships, it's really great, especially when our friends are oftentimes kind of our chosen family, to be able to communicate in their language of love, as well as to feel some freedom to express in our language of love, and just to let them know, like, this is how I express my love. So I think that just being able to get more fluent in the language of love can affect all 4 of these areas, and that's 1/4 of the categories of our life, and that's significant, because even just understanding those 5 languages, let alone getting a little bit more fluent in, the language of love of planning, or the language of love of, cooking a special meal. Those kinds of things can really up level 4 areas of our life. And when a quarter of our life is activated, that will definitely activate other areas of our life. So this is why I think it's really important, especially when we're trying to live our most illumined life. Like, most illumined life means that we feel appreciated, we feel connected and on purpose and truly ourselves. And so when we're able to communicate with that just nuance of our language of love, it's truly a game changer in so many areas of our life. So if you might know the story of The Gift of the Magi, it was one of my favorite movies growing up. It was with Marie Osmond, if you know who she is. She's still one of my favorite performers. Not that I watch her every week or every day, but, just has a really special place in my heart. Anyways, she played this woman, and it was a couple that was, with very few means. She had such long, beautiful hair, and the only way she could get money to buy a gift was to sell her hair. So she sold her hair for money to buy a chain for her husband's most prized possession, which was his pocket watch. And he, with very few means and, not a lot of money, sold his pocket watch, which was beloved to him, his most prized possession, so that he could buy some really beautiful hair accessories. And she ended up selling her hair. So when they exchanged gifts, it was kind of a funny moment, funny but not funny, or not funny but funny, where they realized that the gifts were kind of useless because they were getting gifts for each other, but in fact the other person had sold their what they needed to use that gift in order to buy the other person a gift. Being able to be much more proactive about understanding our love language can save a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources, and really communicate, like really what they wanted to communicate was just their love. And, this is a great example of being more accurate with our love language. And lastly, one of the reasons why it's really important to understand and get more fluent in love languages is that it really helps us to deepen relationships. And, I say this on relationships on every level. So whether that's our neighbors or our family or our coworkers, just being able to observe and or ask them, what is your love language? That would be ideal if they know. And then if not, they could go to the website and take the quiz. But being able to understand that can really help us to manage our not only our expectations of others, but also free us up to not expect our love language to be always satisfied, but also to free up people to be like, oh, that's how they share their appreciation, or that when she bakes cookies, that is her language of love and appreciation. But in fact, I don't eat cookies, so I can understand that and not feel like, oh, she doesn't love me. And so, being able to understand someone else's love language is truly a gift and an art form. And one of those Jedi skills of managing our relationships. So it really frees us up from our expectations, and then also frees other people up from the obligation of speaking our own language. So whether the love languages make sense to you or not, my point is that communication can really up-level our life in so many very significant ways, because our relationships are really like the connective tissue of our life. And another classic resource on communication is actually about 25 years old, or 25 years since the book came out. It's called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It was a bestseller in the 90s. And it was just really great because it really showed and explained how men and women communicate in very different way, almost universally. And a lot of times women communicate from their feelings, and sometimes, and universally, they found that men communicate by what is so, what is in their mind's reality, as opposed to a feeling. So when couples are miscommunicating, or coworkers who are male and female are miscommunicating in that way, it really can add some stress to a situation. So my point is, not just love languages is the only way to get through this next week and up-leveling our last 60, best 60, but really just up-leveling our communication in general, and being able to even ask for what we need or what we want. So we're not left feeling frustrated or neglected, or not getting what we want, because that's really a source of not feeling very illumined, and this is all about like living your best life. And if we go through life just upset that nobody gets us, like, that's up to us to really be able to first get ourselves and what we need, but also to communicate that in a way that's really effective. So, just in closing for this week, communication is a never-ending lesson in our lives. Being able to communicate effectively can really open up doorways into leading our best lives. So I have some exercises, of course, for you to do. There will be links to the websites for love languages, and men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I also have a link to the nonviolent communication, which is really more about having compassion and to kind of being able to listen without an agenda and to communicate without an agenda. So there's a few other great communication resources that I think will be really helpful. So we've done some review. We've done a lot of reflecting on the past year and the past decade. Like, think about, what do you want in the next year, in the next decade, in the next chapter of your life? And how can communication more effectively access that for you? So enjoy the exercises. Email me back, give me some feedback on how this is going for you, and I look forward to our next video and the diving into our last 30.